Hey guys, this is Sean here from Micro Budget Film Lab, and this is episode 4, or episode 4, it's number 4 in a series that I've been doing on filmmaker paralysis. Because I get a lot of emails, and a lot of people talk about how they're stuck in various ways. And so I covered financial paralysis and how to deal with financial paralysis. I covered organizational paralysis and how to deal with that. And in this one, I want to talk about creative paralysis, because people often think, well, how do I get a good script? How can I get a good script? How can I make a good product? And I mean, it's a huge topic if I talked about everything, but I'm going to talk about scripts or stories primarily. And I think the first thing, and it is a general thing that I've come back on, and it's worth coming back on multiple times, is the importance of a team. That you need to understand that you're not alone in this, and so you need to create a good team of people who will give you feedback, who will give you encouragement, and that's super key at every stage of the process, but right even in the script development process. You want people who will give you notes and will help you move forward with the development of your script. Now, oftentimes that will be the formal production team, but sometimes it'll be people from outside. You might bring in a story editor, for instance. You might bring in friends and family and so on that you send the script out to, but make sure that you conceive of the script development process as a collective process. You're not alone. Film in every part, in every way, is a collective art form. And so even at the story development phase, you need to think of it in that way. But there are other ways, even when you think about if you got stuck. So how do you deal with writer's block, for instance? And how do you deal with quality? I mean, it's like anything, it's like a muscle you need to work, and so you're going to get better at it the more you do it. So you need to write a lot. You need to make a lot of movies, because you're going to get better at making movies, and you're going to get better at writing by doing it more often, that's for sure. But you need to be systematic about it, especially when you don't have a lot of money, both in the production phase to save time and resources. You want to be as organized as possible, but even in the script development phase, you want to be organized, because you want the script development process to be as effective as possible and as powerful as possible. And that means breaking it down into a multi-stage process. Now, let's start with concept. If you don't have a story right off the top of your head, what do? I don't always have stories off the top of my head. I write a lot. I try to write 2 to 3 scripts a year, depending on my year, how busy I am with other things, but that's kind of my goal. But I don't always have, it doesn't always just fall out of the sky. I mean, I have to work sometimes at it. And so often what I'll do is I'll read articles in the newspaper from different sections of the newspaper or from magazines. I read a lot of science stuff, and I'll clip stuff. I'll use Evernote. I don't know if you know Evernote. It's an app you can use to clip articles that you find online and save them and organize them. And that can be really useful. And then I'll take stories that I find really interesting, that I think, say a science story about gene therapy, or some interesting stuff I read about blood, young blood being used to rejuvenate older people. And I'll then take another thing. Oftentimes, if I don't have something that's in my own life that's inspired me, in the sense of like something that's recently happened to me, I'll go back and I'll think about what are the most powerful moments in my life that I have had, both positive and negative. And I'll make a list of several of them. And I'll have a list of articles that have interested me, of stories that have interested me, and I'll take that concept and I'll have these say numbered concepts of things that have happened in my life, not just thinking about the moment, the moment I graduated, but all the moment around it that led up to that the kind of story around that. And then what I'll do is I'll cross-reference them with each other, and I'll mix them. I'll create this hybrid. Okay, blood transfusions to make people younger again, and graduating university, or that and the time somebody important in my life passed away, or I got married. And how do I combine those? What if I combine those two things, what kind of story do I end up with? And I almost always come up with a story that's interesting, at least for me, and gives me a basis to work on something. And if you do that, if you're stuck on something and you can then draw on things that you know and mix them, you'll get something interesting and more universal than if you just go, there was that time my friends and I went camping and that was a lot of fun. That on its own is interesting to you, but it doesn't have a universal significance, in the way that if you take a story that got your attention, that had nothing to do with you, but it got your attention, it probably has some kind of universal significance, and you blend the two, then you can get this kind of personal story that has some universal significance to it. And I find it's a really useful strategy for coming up with story ideas. But then once you have a story idea, the key to creating a good script and moving forward and getting over writer's block. So you've got this great idea. How do you get over it? You have to develop your script in a really systematic way. And by systematic, I mean you go through, first you come up with a log line being, you know, who's your lead character and what is their problem internally and what is the exterior goal that they have to overcome. And that's going to be your log line. An alcoholic shoe salesman has to, you know, fight an invasion of Martians in order to save his family. So you see the stakes in there, save his family. You see something about him that he needs to deal with. His alcoholism and maybe his sense of that he's a shoe salesman and so he's not happy with his life. He saw himself as doing something better. And the goal is to defeat the invasion from Mars. So you get that, you work on that, and you create that, and then you're going to turn that into a beat sheet. And a beat sheet is like going to lay out every moment in your story on keeping in mind pages, the pages where they're going to happen, and you're going to break your story down into kind of point form, bullet form notes in order to develop the story before you ever go to draft so that your story is totally planned out. And this is, in a sense, the hardest part because you have to figure out your story and you need to figure out the ending of your story. You need to figure out what the theme is, but you do it all then, and then you take those bullet point notes, and you turn it into a treatment. And a treatment is like turning that into a short story. And once you've got a short story, then and only then, and you're revising at every step of this process, then you go to script. And by then you know your story so well, you know your characters so well, you know everything so well that you're going to create a much better script. It's still going to require more revisions than you care to know. Frankly, it's going to require 20 or 30 revisions once you've got a script. But your first draft is going to be much better. And you're going to have an interesting story that has universal significance, and you're going to have a quality script. And you need to bring that kind of systematic approach to every aspect of the filmmaking process, through the production phase, the pre-production phase, and so on. As much as possible, planning stuff out, planning out the creative elements so that you are prepared when you go on set, knowing your shots, your shot list, knowing the motivations of your characters in the scenes that you're going to shoot that day. All that stuff, if you plan it out in advance when you're not under pressure, then you're going to be much better off, and in that way, you're going to overcome creative paralysis and prevent yourself from locking up at key moments, whether it's when you're sitting in front of a blank screen or whether you're standing in front of blank-faced actors on set who are waiting for direction from you. So I hope that helps you out, and I hope this series has helped you overcome some of the fears that are maybe paralyzing you and given you some tips to move forward with your feature film. And if you have any comments, please do shoot me a line at admin@microbudgetfilmlab.com, and look forward to seeing you in the future.